Greetings, dear audience. Before we dive into today's tale, we invite you to share your location in the comments below. And remember to show your support by liking and subscribing. The hike was progressing beautifully, and I was truly savoring each moment until that instance at the waterfall. Marge and I have always embraced adventure, and discovering a hidden gem like this waterfall is precisely what fuels our passion for these journeys. When Marge proposed rinsing off, I didn't give it much thought. We were hidden away, and it felt as though no one was nearby. She shed her garments with ease and stepped beneath the gentle cascade of water. I perched on a nearby rock, absorbing the beauty of the landscape and the joy radiating from her. Then Logan arrived. He didn't exactly leap out of the woods or anything. He emerged from behind the trees, nonchalant as always, as if he had been meandering in the vicinity. Marge remained without her top, using the hand towel we had brought to dry off, and rather than panicking or trying to cover herself, she maintained a serene composure. She remained completely unfazed. And Logan? He behaved as if it were the most ordinary occurrence imaginable. He shared a detail with us, likely regarding Donald's needs or perhaps another piece of information related to the camp. I found it impossible to concentrate, as my mind was preoccupied with the sight of my wife standing there in her half-naked state. While Logan remained completely unresponsive, she playfully teased him about something, sharing a light laugh before completing her dressing routine. I compelled myself to engage as if everything were normal, yet the strangeness of it all loomed over me like a heavy fog. That night back at camp, I found myself more subdued than normal. The atmosphere was lively, filled with conversation and laughter as people gathered around the fire. I attempted to engage in various ways, yet my mind continually returned to the moment by the waterfall. How Logan casually strolled over. Their lack of reaction was telling. They appeared so effortlessly genuine, as if this were completely ordinary. I didn't believe there was anything happening between them. I had faith in Marge, and besides, Logan didn't seem like her kind of person. Yet, there was an unsettling quality to the exchange that lingered in my mind. An unusual sensation that eluded my ability to articulate. The following day, that same sensation lingered with me. I attempted to brush it aside while hiking, concentrating on the scenery and the cadence of the path. Yet it proved futile. The playful exchanges I typically shared with Donald and Bill felt lackluster. And Marge picked up on it too. "How are you doing?" she inquired that morning, her tone airy yet laced with intrigue. "It's nothing," I replied, dismissing it casually. She squinted, skepticism etched on her face. "It seems you've been rather silent since yesterday. Has something occurred?" I merely shrugged, attempting to divert the attention. "Feeling a bit worn out, I suppose." However, Marge remained unconvinced. "It's not merely exhaustion that you experience. Your behavior has been unusual since the day before yesterday. What's happening?" I paused, uncertain of how to start articulating what had been troubling me. An unsettling feeling gnawed at my thoughts, suggesting there was something I remained unaware of regarding her and Logan. For around 8 years, I had known Logan, who had always been a member of this close-knit circle alongside Marge and the other wives. The husbands and OD, who is Logan's boyfriend, found themselves as the outsiders on this trip. Throughout the years, I had inquired with Marge in a laid-back manner about whether she had ever gone out with Logan or if any of the other women had been linked to him. She had consistently dismissed it, replying with a firm no. Yet, uncertainty began to creep in. Their interaction by the waterfall felt strikingly intimate. Marge usually kept her body to herself, but she didn't bat an eye when Logan approached her while she was topless. No matter how hard I attempted to brush it aside, I simply couldn't. It continually returned to my thoughts. Was I overthinking things? Could this be a warning sign? I resolved that I could no longer allow it to linger. Before we resumed our journey on the trail, I took Marge aside, away from the group, aiming to address the tension while we still had a moment of solitude. "Hello," I started, aiming to maintain a cheerful and easygoing tone. "May we have a brief conversation?" She regarded me with a mix of curiosity and caution. "Absolutely. Hello there." I inhaled deeply. The events that unfolded at the waterfall are the focus of this narrative. It felt somewhat unusual. You appeared unfazed when Logan approached, despite the fact that you were, well, without a top. Her expression changed at once. her brows furrowing in irritation. "Is that the reason for your moodiness?" she inquired, her tone cutting. "It's really nothing to worry about. Everyone has encountered breasts before. Even Logan. It's time to mature." I stood there, taken aback by her response. Marge seldom became defensive unless she harbored some guilt, and this unexpected aggression triggered warning signals in my mind. I attempted to maintain my composure, yet her condescending tone made it quite challenging. "Listen," I stated, maintaining a calm tone. "I don't want to blow this out of proportion. It simply didn't appear to be the typical response one would expect. Typically, you display a greater sense of humility." With her arms crossed, she radiated an unmistakable air of defensiveness. "You're overanalyzing it," she stated bluntly. It was insignificant. Her evasiveness only intensified my doubts. "Marge," I insisted, "you're becoming quite defensive at this moment. What is the reason? If it's that simple, why not just state it plainly?" She let out an exasperated sigh. "You're being absurd," she remarked, her tone slipping into a patronizing note. "What's the point of turning this into an issue?" My patience began to wear thin. "It seems there's something deeper at play here," I stated with conviction. "To be frank, your current behavior isn't contributing positively. Simply reveal the truth to me. Is there a connection between you and Logan?" She tensed up. "Absolutely not," she broke. "We were never in a relationship. I have mentioned that to you previously." I squinted my eyes. "So, why does it seem like there's something you're not sharing?" She raised her hands in frustration. "Very well," she replied with a hint of bitterness. "Do you seek the truth?" There was indeed something, yet it wasn't quite as you might imagine. My heart pounded with intensity. "Could you clarify what you mean?" Marge inhaled deeply, her hesitation evident, yet aware that retreat was no longer an option. "We never dated," she said with caution, "but there was something between us. A casual arrangement between friends. It was just before we made it official." It was hard to fathom the words that reached my ears. The surprise rendered me momentarily at a loss for words. Yet, I managed to compose myself sufficiently to inquire with a tone that was both astonished and reactive. "So you were intimate with him when we first began our relationship?" Marge retorted. "There's no need for such crudeness. I prefer not to discuss this at the moment. Could we possibly discuss this after the trip concludes?" I retorted, my voice escalating. "Absolutely not. It's your choice. Share all the details with me now, or I will begin questioning your friends." She regarded me for an extended moment, likely assessing the gravity of my words, and then her shoulders drooped. It seems she understood that I was being sincere. Marge exhaled deeply, allowing the entire truth to flow freely. "Very well," she replied with a hint of resentment. "But it's essential for you to grasp the entire situation first. You already know I experienced a sequence of regrettable connections in my past. Individuals who weren't right for me. Partnerships that simply fell apart. I believed that part of the issue stemmed from rushing things physically. So when I encountered you, I desired to proceed at a more measured pace. Do you recall that?" I nodded curtly, acknowledging that you inquired about postponing the physical aspect of our relationship. I agreed because my interest in you went beyond just that. I prefer not to date several people simultaneously. I mentioned that my attention would be solely on us. Do you recall? She recalled, her voice barely above a whisper. That held significant meaning for me back then. You were indeed distinct. However, I mentioned at that time that you were welcome to see other people if you wished until we established our official status. I squinted my eyes. I made it clear that dating around wasn't something I wanted to pursue. I desired to focus on one relationship at a time. Marge let out a slow breath. I understand. That brought me immense joy at the time. Her voice trembled just a bit before she carried on. However, there are additional details you should be aware of regarding that period. Details about myself and my companions. To be frank, it might come across as quite chaotic. I prepared myself. Proceed. Recall when I mentioned that Logan was merely a friend? She inquired, avoiding my gaze. Indeed, I did. Logan and I were involved in a casual arrangement just before you and I started our relationship. Additionally, it wasn't solely my experience. She inhaled deeply. Kate, Miranda, and Sarah each found themselves incomparable friends with benefits arrangements with Logan while being in relationships with their current husbands. I was utterly astonished. Excuse me? Indeed. Marge pressed on, her lip caught between her teeth. It was something that began shortly after finishing college. Kate was tired of dating. She always seemed to choose the wrong guys. During this period, she and Logan entered into a casual arrangement. She mentioned that it was simpler to concentrate on discovering the right person. Donald, in her situation, because Logan was fulfilling her physical desires. This approach allowed her to focus on building an emotional connection with Donald. Free from the urgency of physical intimacy, I shook my head, attempting to grasp the words that reached my ears. So Logan was essentially a stand-in for all of you? Not quite, Marge replied, grimacing. It was primarily about allowing ourselves the freedom to cultivate genuine emotional bonds without succumbing to poor choices driven by, other impulses. Kate and Logan shared a mutual comprehension. He understood that it was all about assisting her in discovering her perfect match. They would even discuss Donald while still entwined in each other's embrace. When Kate became convinced that Donald was the right choice, they decided to part ways, leading her to embark on a physical relationship with him. I exhaled slowly, a sense of disbelief washing over me. In the end, they found their way to marriage. I felt as though I was on unstable terrain, struggling to grasp her words. It felt like the very essence of our connection was constructed upon a narrative I was completely unaware of. Taking a deep breath, I spoke as steadily as I could. So let me clarify this. Are you saying that Logan wasn't merely a platonic friend during our relationship? Marge shifted uneasily, folding her arms in a protective manner. We hadn't made it official yet. She spoke, her voice strained. I mentioned that you were free to see other people as well. I leaned in, my voice steady yet resolute. However, I chose not to. I decided to concentrate on our connection. I aimed to create something genuine with you. What about you? So, you were still sharing a bed with Logan? Her expression became steely. There's no need to be so crude about it. You're really exaggerating this situation. I mentioned it was merely a matter of discovering the right individual. Logan was simply assisting me in holding on until I had certainty. Assisting? I echoed with a sense of bitterness. You're saying that during the times I took you out, held your hand, kissed you goodnight, and believed I was developing feelings for you. So, you were heading back to Logan's place to spend the night with him? Marge recoiled slightly but stood firm. You're presenting it in such a questionable light. It wasn't that way. I shook my head in disbelief. So, how was it, Marge? Clarify this for me, as it currently feels like I was the naive one you were leading on while fulfilling your physical desires with your so-called sex buddy. She let out a deep sigh, suggesting that I was being unreasonable. Look, she said, her tone easing a bit. I went through many difficult times before I met you. I was hesitant to dive into anything physical, fearing it might jeopardize the potential for something truly remarkable. Logan served as a means to maintain that boundary until I was certain you were the right choice. A harsh laugh escaped my lips. Well, what's the point? So, he played the role of your stand-in boyfriend? What's your contingency strategy? Your intimate accessory? No, she retorted sharply. It was never about affection, or a connection with Logan. He was simply present to offer his support. He has accomplished it for Kate, Miranda, and Sarah as well. That revelation took me by surprise. Excuse me, could you clarify that? I inquired, taken aback. Are you seriously saying that Logan has been the reliable choice for all your friends during their relationships with their current husbands? Marge gave a hesitant nod. It all began with Kate. She had grown weary of dating the wrong types. So Logan stepped in to assist her as she explored her connection with Donald. It proved effective for her. And when she shared her experience with the rest of us, we naturally gravitated towards her approach. I ran my fingers through my hair, attempting to make sense of it all. So you all treated Logan like some sort of plaything while you searched for husbands? Marge objected. That's not fair. He understood the essence of it. He has always embodied a sense of freedom. He had a desire to assist. I was utterly astonished by what I was hearing. Logan, the person with whom I had shared countless rounds of golf, the one I had thought of as a friend, had been intricately woven into Marge's life in a manner I had never envisioned. So, you really believed I shouldn't be informed about this? I inquired softly. You allowed me to enter this relationship without any clarity. Marge's eyes shimmered with remorse. She maintained that it held no significance. The conclusion came when we finally defined our relationship. I squinted my eyes. Clarify what you mean by official. Marge, I believed we were in a committed relationship when we decided to date exclusively. She gently shook her head. Dating differs from being in a relationship. We were merely beginning to understand one another. I tightened my hands into fists, striving to maintain my composure. At what point did it become official for you? Her voice floated softly, almost inaudibly. The evening you proposed we take that step. And we shared our first intimate moment. The room whirled in a dizzying dance. A wave of nausea washed over me. 7 months, I uttered with a raspy voice. You were involved with him for 7 months while we were together? Marge remained silent, yet her quietude conveyed a wealth of meaning. Allow me to clarify, I stated, my voice trembling with fury. I would take you out for a lovely evening. And we would enjoy ourselves immensely. We could hold hands, cuddle, share a kiss, perhaps even make out, and then I'd drop you off before you head out to meet Logan. Right? I was unable to complete the sentence. Try to keep it clean. She broke. I rose to my feet, craving distance yet aware that no escape awaited me. We found ourselves in an isolated expanse, with the only path leading us onward. Even with the nausea churning in my stomach, I compelled myself to voice the question that had been eating away at me. When you mention sleeping together, are you referring to just self-gratification? Or did you engage in all activities? Every position, the teasing, the adventurous things we explored together. Marge fell silent, her complexion drained of color. You must respond to me, I stated with an icy demeanor. I will uncover the truth, whether it comes from you or from someone else. I pointed in the direction of the rooms where her friends were staying. Her voice was scarcely heard. She confessed it all, even more so than with you. The room whirled with intensity. Yet I compelled myself to voice the final, most agonizing question. When will it happen? Marge's eyes brimmed with tears. On the eve prior, she murmured softly. What about the evening prior to our initial experience? I inquired, my tone empty. In that moment, the urge to escape was stronger than ever. Yet I remained seated, brooding, struggling to comprehend the whirlwind of events that had just unfolded. Marge attempted to console me, her hand resting gently on my shoulder, as if that small act could somehow erase the hurt. Please, I said, my voice steady yet soft. Just get away from me. Time is essential for me. She parted her lips as if to speak, yet prudently reconsidered her words. In silence, she turned and made her way to the tent. While I remained, adrift in the stormy waters of my mind, I found myself stranded, ensnared in the wild, with no access to the 12-passenger van waiting at the trail's end. I found myself with these individuals for an additional 2.5 days, followed by a lengthy half-day journey back to civilization. I did what I could. I gathered some blankets and pillows, creating a makeshift bed on the floor at the foot of the bed, and attempted to drift off to sleep. I must have lost consciousness for a few hours, but it was uneasy and crowded with disjointed reflections of treachery. As I opened my eyes, the darkness of the sky enveloped me, and I understood that I had roughly an hour of solitude before the world around me began to awaken. The heavy burden of doubt enveloped me as I struggled to gather my thoughts. A part of me yearned to stride out at that very moment. Consequences be damned, yet I pondered what resolution that would truly bring. Moreover, I had no means to depart independently. I found myself revisiting every detail in my thoughts, seeking clarity amidst the confusion. Marge's reasoning may have been convoluted, yet what lingered most was the pain I felt. It felt like our whole connection had been an elaborate deception, with me as the unsuspecting one who accepted something less valuable, believing I had achieved something precious. The thought sent a wave of unease through me. Then there was the intense desire to dismantle everything, to expose it all before everyone and observe the consequences unfold. In the end, weren't we all gathered here under some illusion? But what benefit would that bring? The pain would remain, and the past would stay unchanged. As the camp began to awaken, I resolved to maintain my composure, at least for the moment. The sun ascended gradually above the treetops, creating elongated shadows that stretched across the campsite. Individuals slowly emerged from their tents, stretching and wiping the remnants of sleep from their eyes. Logan stood out, his characteristic relaxed smile firmly in position. "Morning," he remarked nonchalantly, as though nothing was amiss. I simply nodded, my gaze fixed on the fire pit as I coaxed the embers back to life. As the day progressed, it became evident that Marge had briefed Logan on my knowledge during lunch. I noticed it in the way he abruptly began to cozy up to me, engaging in small talk even though my disinterest was clear. "Hello there, how are you holding up?" Logan inquired, inclining slightly nearer than was required. "Just let me be," I stated plainly, avoiding his gaze. He tried a few more times, each effort wearing on my patience until I finally lost it. "Let it go," I insisted, my tone quiet yet filled with a menacing confidence. "I mean it." The message clearly resonated, as he retreated with a displeased look. Marge intervened at that moment, softly steering Logan away with a quiet, "Just give him space." The following 24 hours unfolded with greater ease. It appeared that everyone picked up on the subtle cue and chose to give me some space. However, after that, Logan's demeanor shifted entirely. His usual easygoing attitude had vanished. He grew distant, not only with me but with everyone in the group. From time to time, he would drop subtle, passive-aggressive remarks, nothing overt, yet always aimed at me. As the seventh night approached, I found myself easing into a sense of calm. We huddled around the campfire, preparing the final bits of our meal while exchanging tales. The ambiance was cheerful, brimming with joy and comfort. Even with the earlier unease still hanging in the air, Billy began recounting an extensive, cringe-worthy tale from his high school days involving his first girlfriend. It was one of those stories where every possible mishap occurred, and he portrayed himself as the endearing fool. Upon completion, he shook his head and let out a laugh. "I still can't fathom how I could have been so foolish. The mere thought of it makes me shudder." The group laughed, but Logan took advantage of the opportunity. "Well, at least you've made some progress," Logan remarked with a sly grin. "Some individuals never take responsibility and move on from their history." He gazed directly at me, his eyes shining with a sense of superiority. I tightened my jaw, battling the impulse to reply. At that instant, I felt as though I was outside of my own body. All I could see was red. The filter had vanished. Rationale had vanished. It was happening. "You know, Logan," I said, my voice steady yet trembling with rage. "Indeed, you are correct. At times, we must confront our past directly and with courage." Marge's eyes widened, and she attempted to interject. "Brian," I utterly disregarded her. "Can we talk about the time when you were involved with all our partners while we were still dating?" All at once, the campfire fell into a profound silence. Even the insects appeared to pause their evening symphony. Every gaze was fixed on me, filled with astonishment. "Oh, gentlemen," I continued, gesturing with a flourish, "were you unaware?" Indeed, while they were withholding from us to establish a connection, I made sure to use air quotes, our future wives were treating old Logan here as their personal plaything. Donald and Billy appeared to be a mix of confusion and anger. Sean wore an expression as if he had stumbled upon his grandma in a situation too shocking to describe. Utterly catastrophic surprise. Yet, my work was far from complete. I glanced over at Donald. Kate was the one who spearheaded this incredible plan. I let out a sharp spit. She realized that the secret to cultivating a lasting relationship lay in embracing a gradual approach. Take the time to understand one another before taking that next step. What you really need to manage those cravings is a close friend ready to satisfy your desires when you return home from your outings. Feeling all flustered and excited, Donald leapt to his feet, his face flushed with fury. "Forget you, Brian. What makes you so certain about this?" "Oh, I just discovered that 2 days ago," I declared, clenching my jaw, "that when I brought Marge out for drinks, that wouldn't be the only thing she would be indulging in that evening." Marge completely lost her composure at that moment. Her voice trembled as she shouted at me. "What is the reason behind this action?" "There's no necessity." She was unable to complete it. Sean abruptly rose to his feet, his complexion ashen yet determined. "Indeed," he murmured softly, "everything is as it seems." All eyes were fixed on him, a palpable stillness enveloping the room. "Since our dating days, I've been aware of it," Sean confessed, his voice trembling. "I only discovered that it was the same for everyone else after we tied the knot." I apologize. Billy. I truly had no idea it was Miranda at that time. Billy's expression contorted, revealing a blend of fear and sorrow. Sean, he said with a measured tone. We used to go on double dates with Miranda and Sarah. We went out a few times and then took them back to Logan's afterward. Does that imply they? Sean merely inclined his head with a grave expression. I glanced back at Logan, who appeared as if he wished the earth would just open up and engulf him. Two at the same time. Really? I let out a mocking howl. And then, propelled by a surge of wild adrenaline, I truly howled like a wolf. Looking back, it was quite mortifying, yet in that moment, I found it utterly amusing. Disputes ignited by the flames. Donald and Kate were in a heated argument. Billy was struggling to comprehend the situation, and Marge was yelling nonsensically at me. The tumult was overwhelming. A sudden gasp pierced the clamor. All eyes shifted to Kelly, Logan's wife, who sat there with tears cascading down her cheeks. She fixed her gaze on Logan, her voice thick with a sense of betrayal. Deceptions. Additional falsehoods. The cycle continues endlessly, regardless of my willingness to forgive and the countless times I've welcomed you back. You continue to hurt me like this. Suddenly, she struck Logan sharply across the face and pivoted, racing down the trail. Hold on, Kelly, Logan called out, sprinting in pursuit of her. The remainder of the group seethed, muttering quietly to themselves. One by one, the couples meandered away, their bonds evidently unsettled. I stood by the fire, a sense of victory coursing through me. I observed Marge approach, her gaze sharp, lips pressed together. I hope you're happy, she said, her voice cutting through the air. I met her gaze without a moment's pause. I've never felt more content with myself in my entire life, I said, the words escaping with more intensity than I intended. I'm leaning 80-20 towards divorce at the moment, I retorted. I'm at a full 100 right now. Forget you. Unpleasant. Marge stood there, momentarily immobilized, as though she were attempting to comprehend my words. Without uttering another word, she pivoted and made her way back into the tent. The following day unfolded as a grueling 7-hour ordeal filled with sheer discomfort. The morning hung in silence, thick with tension, as we gathered our things, deliberately steering clear of one another's eyes. The ascent to the van was met with an unyielding quiet. The loading process dragged on endlessly, yet our silence remained unbroken. The atmosphere was thick with an overwhelming sense of collapse, as if the very fabric of reality was unraveling around me. After spending 4.5 hours in the van together, we barely managed to exchange 19 words. The silence became unbearable. Upon our arrival home, I immediately sprang into action. I hurried to the bathroom, switched on the shower, and allowed the steaming water to wash away the tangled emotions that had been accumulating. Once I finished, I quickly put on some clothes and made my way to the kitchen. In that moment, chicken nuggets and Dr. Pepper were the only things that felt right. I popped a few into my mouth, the satisfying crunch of the nuggets resonating. And then I considered reaching out to Marge. Yet, what could possibly be expressed? I found myself uncertain about how to start. The following weeks unfolded in a whirlwind of disorder. It came to my attention that Donald and Kate are in the process of getting a divorce. They had shared the most time together among all of us, and they were raising a 10-year-old son. The entire situation struck Donald deeply. He had spent years with Kate, enjoying the longest courtship among all of us. 9 months. To add to the turmoil, he had been caught off guard by the reality. Upon discovering the truth, he was unable to rid himself of the nagging sensation that their entire relationship had been prolonged due to Kate's lack of genuine desire for him. She simply couldn't release her hold on Logan. One evening, I shared a couple of beers with Sean. We had shared a friendship for some time, primarily connecting through our wives. Yet, we had formed a connection through a handful of discussions, mutual experiences, and the usual camaraderie among friends. He was always approachable, and tonight, I craved that connection more than ever. Honestly, I'm at a loss for words regarding all of this, I remarked, taking a deep swig from my bottle. Everything is unraveling. Sean, Donald, and Kate. I never imagined they would find themselves in this situation. Sean nodded, his gaze slightly unfocused. Indeed, it's quite challenging. However, do you realize? Sarah and I have navigated our own challenges. Could you clarify what you mean? I inquired, my curiosity ignited. I had never listened to him discuss his relationship in depth before. Well, he said, leaning in slightly, Sarah was honest with me from the beginning of our relationship. She expressed her desire to wait a minimum of 3 months before we became intimate. However, she mentioned that she would continue to see her casual partner. I held that in high regard. I wasn't seeking anything too serious. But she was totally fine with keeping things casual. She mentioned she was okay with it. And I felt the same way. I paused for a moment, absorbing his words. So, you were simply going about your own business, correct? Precisely, Sean remarked, taking a gulp from his own beer. However, after some time, you understand? I came to understand that I was developing feelings for her. My eyebrows arched in surprise. Excuse me, could you clarify that? So, you transitioned from casual dating to seeking something deeper? Sean shrugged, a hint of embarrassment crossing his face. Indeed, I suppose. It caught me off guard. Yet I found myself desiring her all to myself. Only her. After all that had transpired, I found myself sensing that I was trapped in a bizarre version of reality. Marge and I hardly exchanged words, and the atmosphere between us was thick with unspoken conflict. The sensation of everything unraveling clung to me relentlessly. Those in my vicinity were also falling apart. Donald and Kate were in the midst of a divorce, while Sean and Sarah appeared to be thriving. Meanwhile, Billy and Miranda were making an effort to mend their relationship after all the turmoil they had experienced. Keeping track of everyone's narrative was challenging, yet I made an effort. Sean, I must inquire, how are you both faring? One night, while we were enjoying some beers, I posed a question to him. Sean savored the moment, taking a lengthy sip before responding, his eyes momentarily darting with thought. To be honest, our progress has exceeded my expectations. Following the entire camping adventure, we had a minor disagreement, but it was nothing significant. Sarah was frustrated that we didn't step away from the campfire situation. But it wasn't a major issue. We simply needed to set things straight. I reclined, attempting to absorb his words. Are you feeling better now? Indeed, Sean acknowledged, his tone unwavering. Everything is fine. Our honesty with one another has truly transformed everything. Nothing hidden. That's wonderful to hear. Truly excellent. Some of us, however, can't claim the same. I murmured, mostly to myself. Sean grasped the nuance of my expression. Billy and Miranda. What? I acknowledged him with a nod. Indeed, they are still in the process of finding clarity. Billy believes she has betrayed him. Yet Miranda insists it wasn't as severe as he perceives. She attempted to clarify that it resembled a reverse train rather than a threesome. The entire situation is simply a tangled web of semantics. Sean shook his head, a faint smile playing on his lips. It's baffling to me that they're still discussing it as if it's just a minor detail. But I can understand why Billy is having a hard time. It's challenging. Indeed, it feels as though everything is at stake for them. Children, existence, everything. He's striving to find a way to make it work for their benefit. But you can see it's consuming him, I remarked, sensing the gravity of the situation myself. Sean exhaled slowly. Miranda claims it wasn't a threesome. But really, does it even matter? No matter how you look at it, the entire situation is a disaster. I simply nodded, aware that there was little left to express after that. The subsequent segment of the dialogue, however, carried a distinct sort of gravity. Logan contacted me. Naturally, he did. The man exhibited a complete lack of shame. His message was laden with insincere apologies and a sense of self-indulgence. My response came to me effortlessly. I muttered for him to go take a hike. Sean arched an eyebrow, choosing to remain silent. I blocked him without even glancing at the rest. Indeed, I understand, Sean replied softly. Yet at that moment, Kelly extended her hand. I was taken by surprise. We weren't particularly close, merely friendly acquaintances, at best. However, throughout the following week, our conversations became quite frequent. It appears that Logan and Kelly shared a past. An extensive one. Indeed, Logan and I have had a tumultuous relationship for 15 years. He consistently presents himself as this easygoing, altruistic individual. However, the reality is that he exhibits manipulative behavior. He has consistently shown a focus on himself. He would end our relationship, claiming we're just taking a break, merely to grant him the freedom to pursue his desires. She insisted that he wasn't a cheater. However, once he's finished enjoying himself, he returns, seeking attention once more, and I consistently welcomed him back. I was utterly astonished by what I was hearing. Hold on, are you talking about everything that happened with Sarah and Miranda? Was that merely him repeating the same actions towards you? Precisely. For far too long, I allowed him to trample over my boundaries. At least 2 of those breaks coincided with him becoming involved with someone new. What comes next? At this point, I've completed everything. You've truly reached the end. What? I inquired, caught in a peculiar blend of compassion and skepticism. Indeed, Kelly mentioned that she's relocating to Santa Barbara. I'm bidding farewell to Logan in the frigid Midwest for good. After the hike, Marge and I returned feeling physically drained. Yet it paled in comparison to the emotional exhaustion I was burdened with. Our conversation stretched on longer than any we had ever shared. There will be no disputes or raised voices. I made it clear to her that I wasn't interested in arguing or debating. Please share all the details with me, and I promise to listen without interruption. Once you've finished, I would appreciate the same consideration from you. She consented. She began to speak, but it was filled with apologies and justifications. She would acknowledge that her actions were misguided. Yet, she would always accompany it with an explanation of why it was acceptable, or how it eventually resulted in something beneficial. She expressed her hurt over my behavior at the campsite. Yet she also recognized that Logan shared a significant portion of the blame. I hesitated for a moment, yet remained silent. I allowed her to express herself. Once she had finished, she inquired, "Do you have any questions?" I shook my head in disbelief. "No, your work is complete. Now I shall take the floor." I inhaled deeply, striving to maintain a calm tone. "Marge, all that we've created was founded on deception. I understand your perspective. You sought a unique path, yearning to embrace life in a distinct manner. And, yes, your 3 closest companions accomplished this and all found wonderful husbands. However, I believe you must have realized that embarking on a relationship of this nature was not right." I noticed you tensed up, yet I still had more to say. "It pains me, Marge. Indeed, it truly does. Understanding that you were involved with someone else while we were still exploring our connection. It hindered the organic development of our relationship. Now, it seems as though I'm reflecting on those initial months through a lens. And all those recollections are colored." I stopped and gazed at her, observing the shift in her expression as I brought up the past. "Do you recall about 4.5 months into our relationship? That incredible day we shared together?" It was evident that she was attempting to comprehend my words. "We spent the entire day together, eventually returning to my place. And things were heating up. We were locked in a kiss. Your shirt discarded, my hands exploring you over your shorts. And then, you paused. You expressed regret, mentioned your lack of readiness, and emphasized the need for certainty. I mentioned it was fine, and I allowed you the distance you required. You pressed your lips to mine, whispered farewell, and walked away. I hesitated once more. It seems you might have departed and headed over to Logan's afterward. Is that correct?" She hesitated, and soon tears started to stream down her cheeks. It hit me like a blow to the stomach. I lingered, and she acknowledged with a nod. "You abandoned me there, Marge. You decided to direct that energy towards him instead of me. I'm finding that quite challenging. Perhaps I would have moved past it if it had concluded sooner, during our more relaxed phase. Yet, we found ourselves sharing so many moments together afterward. While you continued your connection with him, everything seemed perfectly fine right up until the day before you arrived. You enjoyed having us both, and you performed whatever mental acrobatics were necessary to rationalize it." The weight of the words was palpable. The most challenging moment was yet to arrive. "Marge," I said softly, "this final part is the most difficult for me to confess. This situation is incredibly painful for me, akin to a knife piercing my heart. Discovering that you embraced a more daring, untamed side with him, it leaves me with a sense of inadequacy, as if I'm not the top choice. It felt as though I was merely suited for a life of tranquility, yet insufficient to warrant it all." She cut me off right away, eager to clarify her point. Brian, that's not the case. It was not genuine. I cherish you deeply. It was merely a physical encounter. It's simpler to be carefree and spontaneous with someone who holds less significance. It holds no significance. I allowed her to complete her thoughts. Then remarked, remember Marge, we had a pact that it was my turn to speak. I took a moment to collect my thoughts. I understand your viewpoint, but I see things differently. As your partner, I've always felt it is my duty to provide you with everything you need. Over the past 8 years, I have invested my emotional energy, physical energy, mental energy, and sensual energy. I've put forth my utmost effort, and I recognize that you have also done your best in certain aspects. However, I realize that I didn't receive your finest from others, and that stings. As an individual, the essence of sensual energy holds significant value for me. The reality that I wasn't deemed deserving of your finest, that you held back your trust from me, it plays a crucial role in my thoughts. I doubt I can recover from this. The atmosphere was thick, and I watched as she began to fall apart. She broke down in tears, imploring me, beseeching me to begin anew, to offer it another opportunity. However, I was unable to do so. I have decided to file for divorce. Marge, the words lingered in the space that separated us. Neither of us had the words to express what we were feeling. I rose and departed, abandoning her in the stillness. Later, she messaged me, attempting to convey that we were simply in a heightened emotional state at the moment, and that I should allow it some time. A part of me yearned to trust her, yet I conceded to her condition. 3 weeks. We both required some distance. It has now been 4 weeks. My emotions remain the same. I've consulted with a divorce lawyer we both agreed upon, with no children in the picture, and we're both in favor of selling the house. The first meeting went surprisingly well. However, a weight remains. She has been profoundly downcast. And to be truthful, I have felt the same way. It's a challenging moment, yet I have a strong sense that this is ultimately for the greater good. At times, circumstances simply fail to align. Dear listeners, we invite you to share your thoughts in the comments section below. Also, remember to like, share, and subscribe.